The escaped man. In the quiet, unassuming town of Ravenwood, dawn crept over the horizon, casting a gentle light across the sleepy landscape. The townsfolk, still wrapped in their warm beds, remained blissfully unaware of the dramatic events unfolding just beyond their usual view. Earlier that night, a notorious criminal had managed a brazen escape from the nearby maximum security prison. Victor Hale, a man whose name was synonymous with escape artistry and criminal cunning, had outwitted his guards and slipped through the cracks of his confinement with a meticulous plan that had been years in the making. Victor Hale wasn't just any criminal. His past was a tapestry of complex heists, elaborate disguises, and masterful deceptions. His escape from the prison was no less spectacular. He had spent months studying the prison's layout, observing the routines of the guards, and exploiting the smallest weaknesses in the security systems. When the moment came, he moved with precision and agility, rendering the prison's defenses useless in the face of his audacity. As dawn approached, Victor found himself deep in the dense forest surrounding Ravenwood. The forest was a maze of tangled trees and undergrowth, but to Victor, it was a familiar terrain. He had spent time in similar woods during previous escapes, learning to navigate their complexities with ease. Now, he used that knowledge to his advantage, slipping silently through the forest and heading toward the distant town. Ravenwood, a picturesque and isolated town, seemed the perfect hideout for someone like Victor. Its tight-knit community and the absence of any significant law enforcement presence made it an ideal location for someone trying to vanish. Victor knew that to succeed, he would need to blend in seamlessly with the local population and adopt a new identity. He came upon an old, dilapidated cabin on the outskirts of town. The cabin, long abandoned, provided a temporary refuge where Victor could plan his next moves. Inside, he found remnants of a past life, old clothes, tools, and other items left behind. With the skill of a seasoned escape artist, Victor transformed his appearance. He altered his hair and beard, donned worn clothes that made him look like a drifter, and discarded any remnants of his former self. Victor ventured into Ravenwood under his new guise. He took on the role of a wandering laborer, taking odd jobs and working hard to stay under the radar. He was cautious and deliberate, speaking little and keeping his interactions with the townsfolk brief. His goal was to blend into the background, becoming just another face in the crowd. As weeks passed, Victor's presence became more familiar to the townspeople. He was seen around town, working at local farms and assisting with various chores. His quiet demeanor and willingness to work hard earned him a degree of acceptance. But despite his efforts, the shadow of his past loomed large. News of Victor's escape spread quickly beyond Ravenwood. The authorities were on high alert, and the search for him intensified. Law enforcement agencies deployed officers to every possible location where Victor might have sought refuge. The search included bringing in dogs, setting up roadblocks, and interviewing anyone who might have seen something suspicious. The tension in Ravenwood grew as investigators arrived to scrutinize the town more closely. They spoke to residents, asking questions about any unfamiliar faces or unusual activities. Victor, though careful, couldn't ignore the rising pressure. He overheard conversations about the search and learned that investigators had received a tip suggesting that someone matching his description might be hiding in the area. Panic set in for Victor. He realized that if he didn't act quickly, his chances of escaping would be slim. With his usual resourcefulness, he devised a plan to throw the authorities off his trail. He used his knowledge of the local terrain to create false leads and diversions. Small fires were set in the forest, creating confusion and leading search parties in the wrong direction. Victor also reached out to his old contacts, using coded messages to get information on the progress of the search and to gauge how close the authorities were to discovering his hideout. His network of informants was still loyal, though communication was sparse and fraught with risk. Despite his meticulous efforts, Victor's luck began to wane. The investigators had become more determined and had narrowed their search based on the diversions Victor had created. They interviewed more residents and scrutinized every detail, gradually closing in on the truth. One fateful evening, Victor was in the cabin, carefully monitoring the situation from afar, when he saw a team of investigators making their way toward the forest. The sight of them was like a cold hand gripping his heart. Victor knew that his time was running out. Determined not to be captured, Victor made a daring decision. He abandoned the cabin, leaving behind most of his belongings to make his trail less obvious. He sprinted into the woods, weaving through the trees and using every trick he had learned over the years to stay ahead of his pursuers. His knowledge of the terrain and his physical conditioning were his greatest assets as he navigated the forest at a breakneck pace. The chase that followed was a dramatic display of Victor's skill and the investigators' relentless pursuit. The forest became a battleground of stealth and strategy. Victor used his familiarity with the area to create misleading paths and temporary hideouts. He climbed trees, crossed streams, and used the natural landscape to his advantage. But even the most skilled fugitive cannot evade capture forever. As night fell, exhaustion began to take its toll on Victor. The investigators, despite their fatigue, were closing in, guided by the clues and evidence left behind in the wake of Victor's escape. In a final, desperate move, Victor attempted to double back and mislead his pursuers one last time. He set a series of false trails and misleading signs, hoping to buy himself enough time to make a clean getaway. But the effort proved futile. As dawn approached, the investigators, bolstered by their experience and determination, cornered Victor near the edge of a cliff. Victor, faced with the inevitability of capture, made a last stand. He tried to negotiate, offering information and promising cooperation, but the authorities were resolute. They apprehended him and brought him back to the town, where the excitement of his escape was replaced by the finality of his capture. The townsfolk of Ravenwood watched with a mix of curiosity and relief as Victor Hale was led away. The excitement of the chase had left them breathless, but the return to normalcy was a welcome relief. The town gradually returned to its peaceful routines, with the memory of the escaped man becoming a part of its local lore. Victor Hale's escape had been a thrilling chapter in the town's history, a testament to his skill and determination. But as the sun set on that eventful day, Ravenwood settled back into its quiet existence, the story of the escaped man fading into the background of its daily life.